are people calling Gen Z lazy when literally the job market is trash? Let's talk about it. Hey guys, my name is Olivia and welcome to my channel. I talk about issues affecting society and just how we can all better ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, everything. Welcome. Be sure to subscribe and join us. The girlies are very welcome. This channel is for the girlies. Anyway, let's get into it. Have you guys noticed that nowadays most people are saying that the generation, my generation, I feel it close in my heart, my generation is lazy? Why are people saying that the Gen Z are lazy? Life is not as easy as it used to be, and I feel like millennials feel this way. They feel the grunt of it in a way, especially when they're trying to establish a family and they realize how expensive it is. But then for Generation Z, I feel like it's much harder for us because people are saying statistically when you go on LinkedIn, there are over 400,000 job postings. But then out of those 400,000 job postings, over 100,000 of them are fake. That is one. Most people are using them to fetch data on applicants, the vulnerable applicants who are jobless and just trying to fund their lifestyles. And most of the other roles, like the other 60% of those roles, are looking for mid and senior level applicants. And it gets really hard because us were all fed this narrative. Personally, I'm in my early 20s, like really early 20s. But then what I was fed, this is the narrative I was fed: go to school, study hard, work hard, get good grades, get into a good high school, finish with top tier grades, get into a high paying career, and after graduation you should to get a job. But then that is not the case. That is not the case for the Generation Z. That is not the case. That is not the case because most of our careers have become obsolete. There is people with PhDs, master's degrees, postdoctoral experience, research experience, and truth be told, these people are fighting for the same positions as everyone else. People with bachelors, people with trade degree, other shit. Like, it's so weird to see because this is not the narrative that we were given. And you know, it all ties down to capitalism. Guys, I say this all the time. The issue is capitalism. The issue is capitalism because things have changed so much for us. I went on TikTok. I'm chronically online, guys. I went on TikTok and I saw someone was talking about like the entire discourse with like how the job market is ruined. And there was this guy, she was talking about how she got a postdoctoral degree. She was a postgrad. She got her doctorate degree. She had a PhD. And for the past 6 months, she'd been trying to look for a job, yet no one wanted to hire her. And I feel like it is so weird to see this. It is really so weird to see this because what comes into my mind immediately when I hear that is that, okay, am I really going to get employed or am I going to be jobless for the rest of my life? Because some of us were not blessed to be able to pull that off, and some of us actually hate going to school, so it gets a bit weird. And you know, most people nowadays are getting their masters and like their postgrad, their PhDs, let me just say their doctoral degrees, because with the job market right now, people are just using an education as a means to kind of postpone the inevitable search for a job that you never get. And the thing is, the older generation have been so harsh on us. Honestly, personally, I have felt it. I have done interviews. I was lucky to get an internship for my first job is going to be an internship. But then, like, I was really lucky in that sense because it's a requirement for my degree program, and in Europe they're a bit lenient when you mention that it is a requirement for your degree program, there are structures that are enabled for students to be able to do those internships and end up getting their degrees. The structures available for that, and personally I'm lucky because I'm in a field that has a shortage of it's a shortage occupation, so there's people who are needed for that. But then I come back to it and I think there's people who do not have this privilege. These societies, countries that do not have these established systems that enable students to get like experience, like the mandatory internships that enable them to get credits in order for them to graduate. Because there's even cases in my degree program where there's people who end up not getting the internship placements, and they end up having to repeat an entire year because they couldn't get an internship in time. And that is messy on its own. That is so messy, because that shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't have to work this hard just to get a job after the system was already established. Because right now, if an older person is laid off and they enter the job market, especially for an entry-level position, we are fighting with people in their 40s who have over 15 years of experience, people in their late 40s who have over 20 years of experience, over 25 years of experience. And you want to tell me that companies will go for us, the fresh undergrads who have literally no experience, like minuscule experience, 6 months of internships, does not count as tangible experience, because at the end of it all, you're still eligible for these graduate roles, the training roles that they have, the 2-year graduate programs that they have. And it gets really hard. And when you try to explain this to like the older generation, that is the millennials, some of the millennials and the Gen X, most of them, they tell us, oh, you guys are just lazy, you guys don't want to work, you don't know, I trekked 5 kilometers every day to go to school. But then you have everything at your disposal. You have your own apartment, you have an education, you live right on campus, everything is handed to you, you have programs that are there. You don't necessarily have to learn a new language so that you can get a job. Everything, tutorials are there on the internet, everything is for free there on YouTube and everything. But then we have those things, but then getting a job right now is statistically impossible, because back in the past, you just go there and people would ask you, okay, so hi, what's your name? Do you have a degree? Yes. Can you handle a laptop? Yes. Do you know how to connect to the internet or to type? Yes. And that was it. Can you read or write? And that's it. And you get a job. And within 1 year, you can afford a car. Within 2-3 years, you can afford a mortgage, and you can take out a loan and pay your house off and everything. But then here, life is so hard. In this era today, life is so hard for us. It's really hard for us. And it gets even worse when you're trying to explain the situation to people. When you're trying to explain the situation to people and they don't seem to want to understand you. And it is really sad, because can we just talk about it? Like, no, like seriously guys, can we really just talk about it? Because I find that life is absolutely unfair, and yes, we're all supposed to adapt in a way that makes sense to us, because life is unfair on everyone. But then can we also talk about the fact that the whole system is ruined by capitalism? The fact that people work their entire lives without being able to afford like even the basic things that were possible in the past. It's impossible to want to get a car without taking out a loan. Most of the time, a new car, but then you can get a second-hand car. I agree with that. It's impossible to even buy a house. It's impossible to qualify for even a loan. Getting a job is so much harder, and employers are taking advantage of this because they slash out the employee benefits and everything, and people are living with the fear of, I hate my job. The cases of depression are increasing because people hate their jobs. They know that they shouldn't be in such situations, but then they literally cannot do anything about it. Why? Because the job market is shit, and they're worried that they won't be able to get another job, and it's impossible to pay bills with no job, literally. And the housing is so much expensive, everything is so expensive. Getting that degree is not an assurance that you will get a job. People are postponing getting into the job market by doing postgraduate degrees, doing 5-6 degrees, because they know that is the only way that they'll be able to sustain themselves. Because once they get into the job market, life gets impossible. Like, can we actually really talk about it? Can we all just talk about, like, can we sit down and just talk about it? Because that shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case at all. And yeah, guys, do you think that things will get better? Do you think that the rich will stop trying to make themselves richer? And with the case of AI coming in, personally, I'm in the tech field. I am doing a CS degree. People have been talking about us being replaced by AI. AI cannot code as well as we can. Since 2022, that is the narrative that has been put out to everyone, and that is what they've been saying, but then that is not the case. And most degrees have been made obsolete. Many career positions have been made obsolete. I'd say things like the manufacturing plants, things that were done by human beings nowadays, they're being replaced by robots, and that shouldn't be the case. I feel like the making like people and job positions like redundant and obsolete, it's kind of ruining everything, because jobs that people with no education could do nowadays, they're all being replaced by AI, and we get poorer and poorer and poorer. And there's this thing in my country we used to say when I was younger, when back in like 2010, 2012, we used to have this thing, Vision 2030. I don't remember since 2020. I don't think I've ever had anyone talking about Vision 2030. It's been 6 years. 2030, sorry. It's been 6 years. We're currently in 2026. We have 4 years to 2030. I'm not seeing the Vision 2030 because corrupt politicians, capitalism, the increase in the cost of everything, everything is just, inflation is happening, but then the salaries are not getting inflated, guys. In many countries, the minimum wage is shit. Because for me, take me for example, my degree as an example. If you were to go to my country, back to my country, with a computer science degree, making 100,000 per month is like a mid-level engineer salary. That's, I'm talking in Kenyan shillings, so that's like 900 euros per month. But then of course things are much cheaper there, but then 800 euros per month as a mid-level engineer. For an entry-level engineer, that's like, let's say it would be 400 euros, and that's pushing it. 400 euros, that's around 460 USD. But then 400 euros for the exact same degree. In Europe, the minimum amount salary that an entry-level engineer will get, like minimum, is like 2,500, 2,700 euros. And that is so, man, I'm getting even so pissed thinking about it. And this was something that I had to think about and I had to factor in. And I don't feel like we all should have to think this way in our, when we are like 18 or 19. Personally, I was 17 when I decided to, up and leave Europe. I loved my country. I literally loved my country. But I had to come to terms with the fact that if I do stay in my country, I will never make any money. I will be broke. I won't keep up with the trends. I won't make as much money as my peers who chose to study abroad are making for the exact same degree. I was a smart student in high school. Top 0.1% of my entire cohort. And I had to sit down and think, man, I love my country, but then where will Pan-Africanism take me? Because I will be broke. And this shouldn't be something that we should be thinking about at 17. And personally, I tend to call myself lucky because my dad is in the field and he went through that. He experienced that situation and he moved here. He's been working here for like the longest time. He's been working abroad for the longest time. And he sat me down and he told me, if this is a path that you're choosing for yourself, I'd recommend that you move abroad. I know it will be hard, but then long term, projecting it long term, it will be much easier for you. And personally, I agree with my dad. I agree with that narrative. I agree with that thought process because I achieved much more in the first year of me living abroad than I ever had with me living back in my country, or with someone who's done 3 years of my degree in my country, because the systems are just so different. And just talking about capitalism and everything, it just gets worse. But then I feel like I can't talk anymore about this. Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think that my generation, Gen Z, are lazy, or is it that the job market and the system is screwed for us? Please do let me know, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.